Hi everyone, please subscribe my YouTube channel new more videos. My name is Diana, and at 37 I prepared her favorite meal. Poached salmon with a lemon glaze, roasted carrots, and a peach pie baked from scratch. I even dug out the old floral tablecloth, the one with the worn edges she used to chide me about but secretly loved. It was Vera's 64th birthday, and I told myself this year could be different. Not better, perhaps, but calmer. The table was set for 6, Vera at the head, joined by her bridge partner June, our cousin Laurie, and 2 neighbors who'd known me since I was a teen. I poured the wine, flashed smiles past plates. It felt almost natural to act like this was affection. Then Vera lifted her glass, toasting to growing older without burdens, she said, smirking as she swirled her drink. And to finally living free of dead weight, she added, her eyes locking onto mine. Honestly, Diana, the greatest gift you could give me is to walk out of my life. Silence fell. June cleared her throat softly. Laurie's fork froze midair. I stared at Vera, blinking once, then again. I didn't ask her to repeat herself. If you've ever been betrayed by those who should have championed you, tell me where you're reading this from. I didn't need to hear it twice. I rose slowly, offered a smile that didn't belong to me, and stepped into the kitchen. I ran my hands under cold water until they went numb. Then I grabbed my jacket from the hook and left without a word. That night I sat in the darkened kitchen, still in my jacket. The pie sat untouched on the counter. The sink held empty glasses, stained with wine and barely rinsed. I looked at the chair where she'd sat, posture rigid, eyes smug, and wondered how long she'd practiced that line. Maybe she hadn't. Maybe it was second nature. I thought of all her birthdays before this one, the ones where I'd crafted handmade gifts as a kid, the years I lit up her porch with candles, the decades spent chasing something she never intended to offer. I stood, stored the pie in the fridge, and glanced at the dishes. I left them unwashed. I went to bed with the weight of silence on my tongue and her words echoing in my mind. The next morning, I opened my journal to a blank page. It stayed blank for a long time. I held the pen but didn't write. My hand lingered above the paper, as if waiting for approval, and in that quiet morning, memories flooded in unbidden. I was 26 when I left grad school. Vera had slipped on ice outside her porch and broken her hip. "You're all I've got," she'd said over the phone, her voice frail and calculated. I still see the way my professor's face fell when I said I wouldn't finish the semester. "Just take a leave," he urged gently. I nodded, but I never returned. I moved back home that week. It was meant to be temporary. Years slipped by in fragments, doctor visits, prescriptions, groceries, errands. I took a job at the local library with hours that worked around her needs. I dated quietly, never deeply. Whenever someone asked about my future, I deflected. When Vera wanted to spruce up the house, I agreed. She painted over the sunny hallway I loved and swapped the kitchen tiles for stark gray ones. "It's more modern," she said. I told myself it didn't matter. It was still home, even if it didn't feel like mine. I let her toss out the chair I'd bought with my first paycheck. I brushed it off when she called it garish. I said yes to every small surrender. That was our pattern. She demanded, I adapted. But now, in the stillness of this morning, it felt different. It wasn't loyalty, it was erasure. A gradual unraveling, thread by thread, until I couldn't tell where I stopped and her expectations started. I set the pen down and wrote something at last. I gave up so much, trying to keep her from feeling alone. But I never asked if I could want more than just surviving her. The ink smudged on the page. I tore it out, folded it neatly, and tucked it in the back of my journal. Then I opened the filing cabinet and started pulling out bank statements. I didn't sleep that night. My mind raced, even as my body stayed still. I kept replaying moments I should have spoken up, set a boundary, chosen myself instead of her. But I hadn't. I'd waited until the weight became unbearable before I dared to name it. In the morning, I made tea but didn't drink it. I sat at the kitchen table, opened a new journal, and wrote a sentence that felt like it had been waiting years to be born. I've been erased from my own life. The words hit harder on paper than in my heart. I read them twice, then underlined them. Then I began. I listed everything Vera had access to. Joint accounts, the house deed, my passwords jotted on a kitchen notepad she pretended not to see. I circled what needed to change first. I gathered every document I could find. Insurance papers, bank statements, the will I'd signed without reading years ago. I called the bank and booked an appointment to remove her as an authorized user. I searched for legal help and found a small firm 2 towns over. The lawyer's name was Tomas Reyes. I liked its steady, unpretentious sound. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing, not Laurie, not the neighbors, definitely not Vera. This wasn't vengeance. It wasn't even anger. It was breath. After holding it for over a decade, that afternoon I stood in the hallway and surveyed the house, not with nostalgia, but with clarity. What was mine? What had I given, and what had been taken without permission? My gaze settled on the old maple desk by the window. It was the last thing my father touched before he passed. I opened the drawer and pulled out the small envelope where he'd kept emergency cash. It was empty. The next day I drove to meet the lawyer. Vera noticed, not immediately, but soon enough. I stopped reminding her about doctor's appointments. I didn't fill the silences with small talk. I cooked for myself, using the small skillet instead of the large one we'd shared. She started hovering again, offering weak smiles, commenting on my outfits like she was trying to play mother. One morning she knocked on my door with a tray of scorched toast and overbrewed tea. "Thought you might be tired," she said softly. "We haven't talked much since, well, you know." She gestured vaguely, as if she hadn't carved her words into my core. "Your birthday?" I asked. She blinked. "That? Oh, come on, Diana, it was a joke. I'd had too much wine." "People say things," I said, nodding, but I didn't let her in. Later that week, I sat across from a bank manager as she reviewed my account history. Her expression shifted as she scrolled. "Someone's been moving money regularly to another account," she said. "Small amounts, but steady. Over $6,000 this past year." I stayed silent. I already knew. That evening, I found Vera folding towels in the laundry room. She looked up, her face weary like a shield. "I saw the withdrawals," I said. She straightened. "What are you talking about?" "My account. Thousands taken without permission." Vera sighed, tossing a towel into the basket. "You're making a big deal out of nothing. It was for things we needed: repairs, medications, your car upkeep. You never asked." "You wouldn't have cared," she snapped. "You always said we're in this together." "Selfish," I repeated when she called me that. Her voice rose. "Yes, you act like you're entitled to something just for being here." I stared at her, then walked past, up the stairs, and into my room. I locked the door not out of fear, but because I didn't want to explain the boundary aloud. The next morning, a letter arrived, no return address. The envelope was simple, the paper heavy, folded precisely in thirds. I knew the handwriting before I opened it, neat, slightly tilted, deliberate. Mrs. Darnell lived 2 houses down. We'd spoken maybe 10 times in 15 years. She always waved from her porch, but never stayed long. "Dear Diana, I hope this letter isn't an intrusion. I've watched from my window for years, not to pry, but to witness. I've seen what you've carried, what you've sacrificed, how you shrink to make others comfortable. You are not invisible, Diana, and you are not wrong. With quiet respect, Elaine Darnell." I read it twice, then again, letting the words sink in. My eyes burned not from pain, but from the unfamiliar warmth of being seen without explanation. I folded the letter along its creases and slipped it into my journal, next to the torn page I'd written after the birthday. It didn't fix anything, but it anchored something in me that had been unsteady for years. That evening I cooked dinner for myself and didn't offer to share. Vera didn't ask. When the dishes were done, I opened my laptop and searched for a notary near the county clerk's office. I'd already called Tomas Reyes. The next step was signing the papers. I checked the locks before bed, then placed the journal on the nightstand where I could see it. The next morning, I dressed in simple clothes and drove to the attorney's office. Tomas was calm, deliberate, precise. His office smelled faintly of cedar, with certificates lining the walls I didn't need to read. I trusted him when he said, "You don't need a fight. You need a boundary that lasts." We spent nearly an hour signing documents, freezing joint accounts, updating the deed, revising my will. At the end, he slid the final form toward me. I paused briefly before signing. Outside, the wind had picked up. By the time I got home, rain was starting to fall. Vera was in the kitchen working on a crossword. She glanced up. "Where were you?" Her eyes narrowed. "You've been distant, secretive." "I don't like it." I said nothing and went upstairs. That night, a storm broke, not from the sky, but through the phone. It started with a voicemail from cousin Rachel. "What's going on? Your mom called, said you're shutting her out." "That's harsh, Diana." Then came texts from old neighbors, the passive-aggressive kind, just checking in. And Lori, who didn't bother softening her words. "I can't believe you treat her like this after all she's done." I turned my phone face down and let it vibrate into silence. Downstairs, doors slammed too hard, drawers opened and closed with sharp purpose. Vera moved through the house with heavy steps, as if noise could carry her blame upstairs. I stayed in my room and wrote it down. I'm not punishing her. I'm reclaiming what's mine. The next morning, Vera pounded on my door. "You've made your point," she snapped. "Now fix it." I opened the door just enough to speak. "It's not a game, Vera. There's nothing to fix." She stared, disbelieving. You'll regret this. Maybe, I said, but at least this regret will be mine. I closed the door and locked it. 2 days later, a notarized notice arrived, official and final. By the end of the week, Vera was gone. She didn't say goodbye. I heard her dragging suitcases across the hardwood at dawn. Her voice, sharp and muttering, seeped through the walls as she called for a ride. A car idled out front for 10 minutes. Then the door slammed and silence followed. I waited an hour before going downstairs. The living room was still. A few picture frames were gone, some drawers left open, but the house's core remained. My house, my name on the deed, now undisputed. The silence pressed in, but it didn't feel like blame anymore. It felt like breath, like room to exist. I started small. I hung the wildflower painting I'd stored away 5 years ago above the fireplace. I swapped the hallway bulbs for warm ones. I brought my grandmother's quilt from the attic and draped it over the couch, its blue and green stitches still soft under my hands. I opened every window, letting the air sweep through until her scent was gone. Later, I found an old tea tin at the back of the cupboard, one I'd kept in my nightstand before Vera called it clutter. I brewed a cup and drank it on the back porch, legs tucked under me, the sun dipping behind the trees. I thought I might cry, but I didn't. Not then. Instead, I sat with a calm so quiet I barely recognized it. Not relief, not triumph, something closer to coming home. That night, I slept with the bedroom door open. The next morning, I signed up for an art class at the community center. The room smelled of pencil shavings and turpentine, warm and unassuming, free of expectations. No one asked why I was there. No one asked my last name. I took a seat near the back, opened my sketchbook, and waited. The instructor, Callie, with silver-streaked curls and paint on her sleeves, welcomed us without fuss. "We're not here to be perfect," she said. "We're here to start." I hadn't drawn since I was 22, not truly. Not since I left school and tucked that part of myself away like something I couldn't afford. The first lines were shaky, my hands clumsy with a motion that used to feel natural. But by the second class, something shifted. I wasn't drawing to be noticed. I was drawing because it felt like breathing again. No one there knew about Vera, the bank accounts, the slammed doors, or the birthday toast that broke something open. They only knew how I captured light, how I smudged with my thumb, how I laughed quietly when someone whispered a joke. It was enough. Each week I came home with charcoal under my nails and a stillness I didn't try to name. I started reshaping the house, one corner at a time. I painted the guest bathroom a soft sage. I moved the reading lamp to the other side of the couch. I filled frames with my sketches, quiet studies of hands, trees, and once, a single daisy. One afternoon, I caught myself humming while cooking. It startled me. I hadn't made sound just to fill space in years. That evening, I sat by the window with my journal and wrote one sentence. I'm not creating a new life. I'm reclaiming the one I left behind. Then the phone rang. Her voice thin but unmistakable. "Deanna," she said, barely above a whisper. "It's me." I didn't respond. The phone felt warm in my hand, caught between memory and instinct. "I'm not well," she went on. "The doctors found something." "I thought you should know." I let the silence stretch, she sighed. "The kids ask about you, they miss you, we all do." It was the word "we" that hit hardest. I could see her saying it, hand on her chest, as if it erased everything before. "I'm sorry," she added, softer. "I said things I didn't mean. This house doesn't feel right without you. None of it does." I looked at the daisy sketch hanging in the window's corner. The light shifted across it hourly, like a clock marking my time. "I'm glad the kids are okay," I said, "and I hope you're getting the care you need." She paused. "Can we talk? Maybe I could visit." I closed my eyes. "I can't shrink myself again so you can feel bigger," I said quietly. She exhaled, hurt or angry, I couldn't tell. "So that's it? That's it?" She hung up. I didn't cry, I didn't tremble. I just sat there, breathing. The silence no longer felt like punishment. The next morning, I went to the garden with a trowel and a packet of seeds. The soil was dry but yielding, ready for something new. I planted lavender seedlings, spacing them gently, then added sage along the fence. I took my time. Each scoop of earth felt like a vow. When I stood to stretch, the sun was low, warming the porch. A breeze stirred the branches. For the first time in years, I could hear the world without a layer of tension. I stayed out there until the light turned golden. Then came a knock. 2 girls, maybe 7 or 8, stood on my front steps, their faces bright and curious. One held a basket lined with a dish towel. "Hi," the taller one said. "These are from my mom." The younger nudged her. "She says your garden makes her feel brave." I blinked, caught off guard. "That's really kind," I said, kneeling to their level. "Tell her thank you." They grinned and ran off before I could say more, their laughter trailing like a ribbon. I carried the basket inside and set it on the kitchen table. The muffins, still warm, smelled of cinnamon and apple. I didn't eat one right away. I just stood there, letting the quiet expand around me. Later, I lit a candle in the living room and opened my journal. I thought disappearing would destroy me, I wrote, but maybe I was never meant to be seen by them. Maybe I was meant to see myself. The candle flickered, casting a soft glow over the pages. Then I turned to a fresh sheet and began to write again.